Big Ten Plus 4 is a member of Odd Pods Media and ASAP All Sports All Plays Network.
Hey there, and welcome on into Big Ten Plus 4, college sports with a Midwest perspective, blue collar and blue blood. Sam Sprunger over there on the drums. I'm Dalton Shetler. Glad to have you with us here on this Friday as we get ready for the weekend. And we've all thought we had a pretty clear picture of what Big Ten basketball was going to be the rest of the way, and the world has just been kind of flipped upside down this past week.
Hey, Dalton.
What's up?
Last week when you were with us, you mentioned that you pretty much were conceding the Big Ten to Purdue.
Yep.
Since then, they have not won, and they're only a game and a half north of Northwestern. So thank you for that. That's great.
Anytime. Hey, anything to make this exciting. At least we're getting a little bit of flair here down the stretch. Now, all that being said, it would still be unbelievable if Northwestern grabs a piece of this Big Ten championship. Yeah. There's so much to analyze there. One, Northwestern's the second place team. That's something in itself to analyze.
They're not tied. They didn't backdoor their way into it to where they're just kind of in second. They're the second place team right now.
We entered the year with Chris Collins on the hot seat, and I think we can say he put a couple of ice packs underneath the cushion of his rear, because I think that is a job well done. I can't believe
for sure
when Pete Nance and Ryan Young transferred out to the ACC. Pete Nance went to North Carolina, and Ryan Young went to Duke. I really didn't know what to expect from Northwestern, or I'll tell you what I did expect. It was to be finishing around 13th in the Big Ten this year. I did not see this coming. And I think for that reason, and this is a conversation that we can get going at some point.
Where you're going with this.
I think Chris Collins might end up being your coach of the year at the end of this thing now.
I don't disagree. And that's not to say that I think that Matt Painter's done any less of a job.
Right.
But it's one of those that, like you said, they were expected to be, if not the bottom, and very near the bottom of the Big Ten. And look at what they're doing. Like, they're beating quad one teams, or quad four. What the good quad?
Quad one.
Okay. Quad one wins. I think they're 6-3 or something like that in their quad one games, and that is saying a lot about the players that are still there. They've busted their butts to get to the point where they're being successful inside one of the toughest basketball conferences in the country. Mm-hmm. But it also says a lot about the coach who kept the mindset of those players in line of what their goals are. And they seem to be at least getting to the point where they're probably accomplishing a lot of those.
And it's amazing because they've had a couple of evolutions. Boo Buie has evolved into a top guard in this conference. Chase Audige has evolved into a premier defender. He might end up winning Defensive Player of the Year in the Big Ten this year. I mean, he's just been that good. Yeah. And again, Northwestern beats Purdue, number one Purdue. It's the first time ever they beat a number one team in program history. And much to Sam's point, 1.5 games back now from maybe winning a piece of the Big Ten championship, which, by the way, do you know the last time Northwestern won a Big Ten regular season title?
I honestly, I would say I would go, if I'd have to take the over under, I'd take the under half, because I don't think, have they ever won it?
Yes, I should do that. I wasn't trying to give you a trick question. They've won it twice.
Okay,
they've won it twice.
I would say probably the 1960s is the last time that they even sniffed the top of the Big Ten like that.
The most recent Northwestern Big Ten championship, 1933.
Oh, even I was 30 years off in the wrong direction. Wow.
It's been 90 years in the making if Northwestern can overcome this 1.5 game droppage right now.
That was before FDR.
Yeah. Their first one was 1931. So look at Northwestern, a bit of a dynasty in the 30s, 2 and 3 years. That's
and they had to have been a relatively new team to the Big Ten, because the University of Chicago used to be in the Big Ten for the Chicago existence for the Big Ten. So they were probably a rather young Northwestern program to be in the Big Ten, and they were winning back-to-back championships. Woo.
Look at Northwestern go Cats.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. It bugs me that Purdue loses. It absolutely does. And we'll talk about Purdue here in just a little bit, but it bugs me. But there are teams that it doesn't bother me to see win big games. So if it's one of those, if they're going to have to lose to somebody, I don't mind. And Northwestern's always been one of those. And I think it's probably because they haven't won a Big Ten championship since the 1930s. You know, they've kind of always been the really smart kids that are part of the Big Ten. You know, they bring the grade point average up for the conference, but that's what they're here for. And to give us the market in Chicago. No, I love seeing them succeed. I love seeing them do well. It's kind of like Vanderbilt in the SEC. I like seeing those guys succeed at some point.
No, it's fair enough. And there's a couple of different things we can stem off of this. One, let's circle back to the Coach of the Year conversation because we talked about Matt Painter, Purdue, and that was our favorites a few weeks ago when we did the midterm.
Would it upset you or think that it was wrong if Matt Painter still ended up winning it?
If we are as of right here today, yes. Okay. But who knows what happens with Northwestern's final 5 games and Purdue. So we'll kind of see how it shakes out. But as of this moment, I think it's got to be Chris Collins.
I don't disagree. I was just curious as to, some writers will be like, nope, I've already, whatever, they were number one for a long time. Don't get me wrong. He probably does deserve it to an extent, but look at what Chris Collins did.
Correct. I mean, all of this, and this is what's really kind of unique or incredible to me is usually these are pretty cut and dry for the most part in these Big Ten races year after year.
There's somebody that stands out as an obvious choice.
Yeah, because really what this is, it's just about who overcomes expectations, preseason expectations the best. Like who's making that jump or flipping it around. Like that's what we do with these awards when we're doing Coach of the Year. It's not like if Indiana ended up winning the Big Ten, that doesn't mean Mike Woodson gets to win Big Ten Coach of the Year. Like because they entered number one.
I was going to say they entered the season expected. So how they got there doesn't matter. It's the fact that was your expectation.
Correct. So,
and if you go by that definition, and that was a great definition that you just gave, because with that, it is Collins. If Painter has overcome expectations with his team, but not to the extent in which Collins has in Northwestern.
Now, and if we're talking about Matt Painter and Purdue with just one loss on the entire year still,
there's a different story.
That also, that kind of shakes things up, but Purdue's lost 3 of its last 4. And again, we'll talk about Purdue in a minute. And that doesn't mean Painter's done a bad job. This was the preseason 5th team in the Big Ten, and they've been dominant throughout the year. But also, I want to throw in there, last night, the team Purdue lost to, Maryland. Kevin Willard's job in year 1 in College Park has been unbelievable. And I don't know what it is. I think brand-wise, just from what we gather, like in the news and the media, I don't know if Kevin Willard was quite this likable at Seton Hall, but the way he behaves so far at Maryland, like, it's hard not to root for this guy. He's dropping along Kane Poly references. Last night, he took a timeout to clear Purdue off the floor so they didn't get in the middle of the court storm he knew was coming. Like, Kevin Willard has been nothing but class so far at College Park.
Okay, so the shock and that you had, or not the shock, the surprise that you had when it was announced Kevin Willard was going to Maryland, last April, I guess it was. You said, really? Like, I was really excited. This is why and I've explained in the past, I have some sort of an affinity for Seton Hall. So I pay attention to them at least a little bit more than normal outside of Purdue teams. And I always really liked how he handled himself, how he carried his team, how he coached his team when they were playing. And that's why I was so happy and excited for this hire, because Kevin Willard is a great coach. Now, I've made it very known that I think he's a fool for what he said about Zach Edey and Trace Jackson Davis. I don't care. That part, but it's his opinion. I'm allowed to disagree with him, but I still think he is a phenomenal coach, and I think he is. This was another part of your surprise is I would have said he was my second place coach for Coach of the Year at the time that we were talking mid-season. That surprised you. I still stand that he's one of the top 3 coaches in the Big Ten this year.
Well, hold up for the award or just overall. No. He's one of the
like so far performance this year. I'm not saying he's going to get third in the voting. I just think with what he had coming into the when he was coming and what was left in the cupboard and what he's been able to do, he has shown that he is one heck of a great coach. And right now I'm saying he would be my number 3 coach, but that I'm not saying you guys or anybody else should think that. Kevin Willard stands out as a phenomenal coach to me.
Well, and I think you're right. And again, Maryland is undefeated at home in Big Ten play. Like Maryland has held court, which is unreal given the conference. But that's why, excuse me, when he said top 3 coach, I mean, anytime like we talk Big Ten coaches, I always have to process because look,
I'm saying Izzo's not in that top 3 kind of thing.
Well, in the Big Ten, for my money, I don't think you're going to find a conference with better coaches top to bottom than what the Big Ten offers. And I think he's
performing this year.
And I think Big 12 basketball might be more deep and better than what the Big Ten has been just for the last 2 years. Is probably the real window. But coaching wise, I think what you get out of the Big Ten is as good as you're going to find anywhere in the country, and I don't really think anybody can top it. I just think that's what the Big Ten's best at.
Worst coach, I couldn't even put you in the direction of the worst coach of this conference. There has to be, if you want to break it down statistically or whatever, there's ways to find out who the worst coach is. I couldn't tell you who that is.
And I don't really want to play that game because I don't want to just dunk on people.
Me neither. Me neither. I'm just saying there are ways that I could rank them, but they mean nothing because honestly, it's just me saying it. But honestly, I wouldn't know where to go and how to figure it out.
I'd tell you where to point, and I don't necessarily know if he's a bad coach. I don't really think he is, given the evidence that we had at Butler and whatnot, but some Ohio State fans would point you to Chris Holtmann right now. I mean, that's the closest to the hot seat coach I think we have in the Big Ten.
And maybe it's going to be those fan bases that are going, okay, we're underachieving. We can tell you he's the worst one here. But it's only in their mind.
At the same time, I saw a graphic tweeted out, I want to say by Fox Sports earlier this week, that listed the coaches that have made 7 straight NCAA tournaments as an active streak. There were 6 coaches to do it. Bill Self, Mark Few, Mick Cronin, Tom Izzo, Matt Painter, Chris Holtmann. Chris Holtmann's one of 6 to make 7 straight tournaments. So, like, now granted, the performances in the tournament, it's been extremely underwhelming.
That wasn't what that heading was. It was making the tournament. So you have to play a full season 7 straight years to get into the tournament.
So I don't know
kind of what we're talking about.
I don't know how you evaluate some of that because I know there's frustration bubbling out there in Columbus, but I don't really know how you evaluate some of that because you're getting to the dance each year, but you're not really dancing at all when you get there.
Let's think about this. For the past 23 years, no Big Ten team's really done much. I mean, they've made it to Final Fours or whatever, but like there's no national champions. So you really can't say, well, you didn't perform. You got to March and you performed, so it doesn't matter. No, nobody has in the Big Ten. So we can move to the second quarter if we're going to keep talking about some men here, men's basketball, because I have a thought of that I heard on the radio last night.
And we will. And I'm sorry, Sam, but I do want to kind of keep here just for a second.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I want to push back against that narrative for just a moment because I think you have so many Big Ten teams that have played 4 national championships. For whatever reason, they just haven't won these games. 2000 Michigan State won. 02 Indiana lost to Maryland, who's now also a part of the Big Ten. 05 Illinois lost. Was it 07 Ohio State lost? Somewhere in there.
I think it was 07, yes.
Somewhere in there, either 06, 07. Yeah. 09, Michigan State lost to Duke. North Carolina, excuse me. Michigan State lost to North Carolina. Like, we can go through 13, Michigan lost to Louisville. 15, Wisconsin lost to Duke. 18, Michigan lost to Villanova. Like, we can go through, and like, the Big Ten has been in that game. They just haven't won it for whatever reason.
And I'm not saying, but that's kind of my, ultimately, you're going to look and say those teams should have or had a very strong stake in winning the national championship. And none of them did, except for Michigan State in 2000. So my point on that, none of them came out of the blue, minus maybe Michigan against Louisville that year, even though that national champion doesn't exist any longer. Yeah. None of them came absolutely so out of the blue that it was out of the realm of, why in the world are you guys here?
Right.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at. And ultimately, when you look at March success, nobody's looking at how many Sweet 16s. I mean, you can pare it down, but nobody's looking at how many Sweet 16s, Elite Eights. They're looking at Final Fours and national championships. There are plenty of Final Fours in the Big Ten, but I'm not sure there are absolutely no national titles, though, in that time. There's a reason why every year there's a graphic that comes through that says longest conference and championship droughts, and the Big Ten sitting at the top because of 23 plus years.
And I don't disagree with that. I think what you end up having a little bit is the LeBron versus Jordan debate, where you talk about, like, well, Jordan's 6-0 in the NBA finals, and it's like, okay, but LeBron's made it X amount of times. Like, do you be penalized because you're making the championship game 10 times if you're not winning it? Like, you know what I'm talking about?
Right.
And I think we're doing that with the Big Ten a little bit.
What you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying. I'm just saying that you can still have underachievement even though you're achieving a lot.
Yeah, and that's fair. That's fair. That's a good way to put it. And
that's what I'm kind of getting at. They're achieving a ton as a conference. Big Ten is there's a reason why they are always at the top of the amount of bids in the tournament. They're one of the best conferences, if not the best conference recent historically, in the aspect of teams in the tournament. Probably Final Four teams. They're probably up there near the top. They just don't have the national championship. So they've accomplished a lot, but they've underachieved because they haven't won the national titles with it too. Yeah. That's my thought process.
And I think that's fair. I mean, because they're not just knocking on the door, they're in the room. They're just not finishing this out. But yeah,
my son had a game last night. He plays freshman basketball. They were in the championship game. They told me, or he told me a couple nights before the game, well, this team's going to bring down 3 of their freshmen that had varsity playing time. And I'm like, okay. And he said, we're going to get beat. And I said, of course you are. You are telling yourself you're going to get beat. You're going to, you can't tell yourself that or you're going to lose, you know? So like, it was like they walked into the room with that team, but they had no chance because they were beat.
It's that quote, the man who thinks he can and the man who thinks he can't are both right. Like,
yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely right. Or it all starts here and then it moves on. And I'm not saying the Big Ten teams that have made it to the finals are all mentally blocked. It's just,
no, I follow.
Some are just, for whatever reason, haven't been able to pull it through. So,
nope. I think it's a good point. All right, now I pushed you too long for the first quarter because I wanted to stay there and get through that. I think it was a good conversation.
That's perfect.
Let's go ahead and move to the second quarter now. I think we have to start off, and this is what I was pulling up on my phone. I think we got to start off the second quarter because we've talked about Northwestern being the darling. They knock off number 1 Purdue. They knock off Indiana on a boo-booey game winner Wednesday night.
Can I say something real quick?
Sure.
To anybody that's saying, oh, well, boo-boo, he's pushed off. Shut up. Okay, come on. Just be quiet. You're not a referee. You don't know what they see. You don't know if they have they made some difficult, stupid calls during this course of the season? Sure. But you know what? They're not going to end, I'm sorry. They're just not going. It wasn't a blatant push. Correct. It was like a Jordan-esque on Russell push. So let's give it up. Come on. Anyway, sorry.
Fair enough.
Get off my lawn.
Yeah. Just shake the fist. Let's talk about for a moment what's going on in West Lafayette, and this is much to the heartbreak
Chagrin.
in the
I like
chest
that
of
word
Sam
better.
Sprunger. Chagrin is a good word. But for Purdue has now lost 3 of its last 4 after being the number 1 team in the country. Lost to Indiana, beat Iowa, lost to Northwestern, and then last night lost to Maryland. And I have the box scores in front of me. But Purdue, again, losing 3 of its last 4, have only lost 4 now for the season. But obviously something is happening here with opponents and Purdue. I have a couple of thoughts on it, but I want to see where you're at here first, Sam.
We talked last Friday about Ohio State, the ladies at Ohio State, right? About how top of the world, they all of a sudden hit kind of a wall, and they're missing one of their better players from injury, but they are young. Okay.
By the way, I think she's starting to make her way back. I think she played in one of the games and came back out. So I'm not exactly sure where JC Sheldon is for Ohio State, but
they're working her back into rotation.
Yes.
But my point on this is I think this is Purdue's freshman young kids hitting the wall, and they're going to pull themselves out of it. I'm sorry, you don't perform at 20 plus games at such a high level and productive level to just all of a sudden forget how to do it. You don't do it. And it's against the same teams they've already successfully done it against. So, I mean, to my point on this is I think they're going to recover. There's still plenty of time before the actual NCAA tournament. And don't get me wrong, I want them to win the regular season, the Big Ten tournament, and then go into, but if they'd lost out and got all the whatever this is out of the way, I'm okay with it because I've seen what they can do at the top of their game. I don't think they're done. I'm concerned because 3 games to 2 and a game and a half in the matter of 2 games. That's troublesome. But that's why you build such a lead too. You can lose a couple of games and still hold the lead. It's a matter of how you recover, and I'm anxious to see if they can figure out the press. The press seems to be the biggest issue with Purdue this year. It's and it kind of piggybacks, but turnovers go with that press. So like that is their biggest issue, is controlling the press. Once they can maybe manage that a little bit better, I think they're going to right the ship. Okay.
I can't believe it's taken people this long to start applying that pressure on Purdue. If you were looking for the Achilles heel, I think it's pretty clear you got to attack the freshmen in this Big Ten conference, and the freshmen have been stellar. That's not trying to take anything away from them, but you've got to attack them if you want to take down number 1, and now teams are doing it, where Purdue's had 16 turnovers against Indiana, 17 turnovers the following game, 16 turnovers against Northwestern, only 7 against Maryland.
They had 7 last night, so it was a better game. But
you know what else went with that? They ended up with the other theory. Force Purdue to shoot the long ball, and Purdue's got great shooters, but if you catch them on an off night, you're going to be all right. Purdue went 2 for 13 from 3.
Too. You remember last year is, if Sasha wasn't hitting, there was trouble because Purdue needed that. And it's kind of doing the same thing a little bit to an extent. It's not as nearly as drastic, but it's still pretty reliant on those shooters.
Purdue went 2 of 13 from beyond the arc last night. Like, I mean, it's
so
you apply pressure, you do that. Like, that's kind of where we're at. And honestly, that's what I'm not counting them out either, Sam. Like, I don't think that's the right way to put this.
This isn't the sky is falling. It's, we just stubbed our toe really hard.
But I also do believe to a certain extent it's a bit of a dose of reality, because I think this is a Purdue team. I mean, they weren't expected to be Big Ten champs heading into the year. They were expected to finish 5th in the Big Ten. Like, they didn't have these expectations because look at the roster. They don't really have NBA talent on this roster.
At least
that's not demeaning. Right. And that's not demeaning. My point is this team has been playing at its ceiling throughout the year. And it's been absolutely admirable, applaudable, because you've been seeing them at their very best for weeks on end. Now a team finally, and I think really Indiana showed the blueprint, showed, hey, here's the weak spot on the team. you got to go for this if you want to get the win. I think they've kind of laid that blueprint out. Teams are starting to follow. How this team responds will be interesting. But usually, like a lot of these teams that we're talking about winning the Big Ten or doing things like that, like last year, you had Jaden Ivey. Wisconsin ends up winning the Big Ten with Johnny Davis. Like, this is a Purdue team that doesn't have lottery picks. Right now, doesn't really have NBA players. That's not demeaning. That's actually, I think, one of the reasons why this team's been so much fun to root for or watch go on this journey, because it's just a bunch of guys working as a unit, and it's been fun as hell to watch.
Except for a lot of people would tell you that
Zach Edey's not so much fun to watch.
Zach Edey is not much of just a guy. He stands immensely over, pretty much everybody he matches up against. And I don't disagree. I agree with you, because I was listening to John Crispin on the radio yesterday, and he said, you have to press Purdue, because if you just let them walk the ball down the court, they have a built-in advantage before they even throw a pass. And he said they have it then. They have it when they dump it down to Edey, because he can look at the opposite side of the court. He can do his move. He said that is a built-in advantage to Purdue right away. He said, so they still haven't lost the chance of being one of the nation's best teams right now. He said somebody's just figured them out.
Yep.
And so I totally agree that Matt Painter, I criticize him all you want, but Matt Painter is a smart man. He's not just working on the same stuff they've been working on all year. Starting today, they're working on the press probably most of their practice, because you know what? We're going to beat this.
Which, if you're a Purdue fan, you should be pretty happy, because this is the type of stuff that'll happen in the NCAA tournament, where then you start looking around and you see what was a phenomenal season end quickly. If this press gets introduced, then that's been that's the school of thought people point to all the time with why Big Ten teams struggle, is because they all play the same.
Thank you.
Yep, you might, because if not, it might be a St. Peter situation.
I tell you what, Dalton, if Purdue wins the national title, I will make my headline my thank you to Indiana University. Understood?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I do believe there are different ways that teams, especially out of conference, will attack Purdue.
Sure.
But I think this was an eye-opener for Purdue to shore up that weakness. And I think it's been working out great there. But you mentioned Zach Edey too. And I want to talk about that, because Crispin's dead on. They have a built-in advantage when they get into the half court, because the biggest thing about Zach Edey is how big he is. But if you notice, you can't work him away from the basket. Like, you fight, and that's what this is all about. It's positioning. Mm-hmm. But how many times, and if you haven't watched closely enough, and next time they're on, spend some time watching just Zach Edey trying to work when they're going through the half-court set, because the post player is fighting, pushing him, and they push him up the lane. He'll catch it near the elbow, and it's still just a one-drop step for Zach Edey from the elbow to get to the rim.
And Dalton, for those that don't know, the elbow is 15 feet away from the basket.
I mean, it is.
And one drop step, and he's doing a little jump hook, or he's getting to the basket and laying it in.
And I think that's what has confused so many coaches. It's confused so many people, because they're like, normally we shove a post player, we fight with him, we get him away from the rim, everything's good. I don't know what to do anymore if that's the case. Like, if you can't force him 15 feet away from the basket and he still be able to make post plays, I think a lot of coaches have been kind of throwing hands up, like, what are we supposed to do now? Like, and so that's
jump shoot either. He does not have a jump shot. So, like, if he catches it at the elbow and he shoots the ball, it's either from the free throw line, or it's a drop step, little jump hook, or something that is within 8 feet.
He is that long.
Yeah.
He gets right to the rim on every single post move, and it makes him unguardable. It's why he's probably still the front runner for National Player of the Year.
Well, last night the Purdue struggled, and he scored 18, had 8 rebounds. Like that's a struggle game. That's a struggle game. It baffles me that that's a struggle game for him.
Well, and the thing is, there isn't a single matchup that exists for him, at least within the Big Ten Conference. And we're talking about a Big Ten that's got Trace Jackson Davis. We're talking about a Big Ten that's got so many bigs. What were you going to say?
I tell you, Trace Jackson Davis has probably been the closest to matching him shot for shot, play for play in games that he's played.
And it's so different, too, because like Trace Jackson Davis in that Indiana Purdue game kept trying to attack the rim. And I commended the effort because people people normally just kind of go away from the tower. But he kept going at Zach Edey like, I'm rising up. I'm bringing it.
He was not afraid to get it swatted.
And he did time and time again.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I think 5
it's just
so times.
Jackson Davis is what, 6 inches shorter?
Yeah.
5 or 6 inches shorter?
Yeah.
I mean,
he's almost 7 foot, and Zach Edey's 7'4".
Now, and don't get me wrong, Trace Jackson Davis can do many different things. Where Zach Edey, it's height induced or height ignited.
And let's not misconstrue what you're saying. You're not saying Zach Edey's only good because he's tall.
Correct. I was careful not to say that.
He has got plenty of talent.
Yep.
I think Trace Jackson Davis has more athleticism, much more athleticism.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, I don't think that's a question.
Hand over fist, more athleticism. But that's not to say that I think Davis is the better player this year either. I don't.
I think that could be an interesting debate. And honestly, I'm not even really sure where I land right now between Zach Edey and Trace Jackson Davis. I think both have played at such a high level. And they're doing it differently. I think that's kind of what makes it a difficult conversation. But anyways, we've touched on a lot of men's basketball topics. Was there anything else? I got so caught up in Purdue this quarter.
The one thing I John Crispin did mention yesterday while I was listening, he said that the Big Ten is so backwards. And he works with the Pac-12 as well. John Crispin does. So he's got two conference alignments, but he said it's backwards because the way teams win in the tournament is not the way Big Ten teams win in conference.
Mm-hmm.
He said, so a lot of, and I still argue with the fact that there are no national titles since 2000. He said, but there are teams that are gearing themselves to succeed in the tournament, like Rutgers, like a Penn State, to where they're working. Illinois was another one he mentioned, that Maryland, those type of teams where they're not the traditional Big Ten teams where they've got a big and they just work everything through them. It's we're geared with 7 wings or whatever that can run you out of the gym any given game, one given game. He said those are more built for the tournament. Regular season be damned. Like they're going to muddle through the regular season and gear themselves. I don't know that I agree with the fact that that's the way the whole Big Ten should go, because you know what? There's still no national titles with those teams that are starting to gear themselves towards that. So it was interesting to listen to, because he's not probably wrong. There are teams that have said, you know what? We're not going to compete traditionally because we tend to get beat in the tournament.
And I would say too, on top of that, if you look at the tournament champions throughout years, if you go year by year, there's usually a good amount of upperclassmen.
Yeah.
Even in the day and age of the Kentuckys and Dukes, you're getting a lot of upperclassmen. Yep. You're getting an experienced backcourt. That seems to be a big part of the recipe, is you have upperclassmen there at the guard position to help you along the way. Look at Villanova. I mean, that was Jay Wright's recipe for years, where he won in 16 and 18 and made it back again to the Final Four last year. I think it takes some of that. So I think there hasn't been a ton of teams that have won national championships where not just adding a transfer, but where they lean on their entire roster breakdown from the transfer portal. And I think that's a difference. You can add transfers to help
accentuate.
Yes, accentuate what you're doing. But if you are just grabbing a bunch of transfers as your mold, I don't believe we've seen a team win it all doing just that. So I think that's interesting to pay attention to as we move forward too. But then, I really don't know. And it's kind of an interesting thought exercise. If you look around the Big Ten, do you believe there's a national champion this year? Do you believe Indiana, Purdue, or any of the others could really win it all?
Given the right bracket to where some of the heavier hitters knock each other out before they would get to one of those teams, maybe. I don't feel comfortable saying yes. But
yeah,
maybe.
I wouldn't either. I don't know. I hear what Crispin's saying there with that point, that some teams are gearing up for it, but I don't believe those teams are necessarily right yet to be able to make that push.
I wouldn't say I would pick Rutgers to go further than Purdue.
Right.
I'm not going to say I'd pick Penn State over how far I think Purdue's going to go. I wouldn't pick Northwestern to go past what I think IU's going to do, except for we say this in a vacuum because we don't have a bracket yet. Once you see brackets, you can figure out, well, if this goes this way, I think they could. And that's possible, but I just unless you got the bracket in front of you, I cannot say yes, I think any of those teams will compete.
It'll be interesting. We'll be talking about that in the following weeks for sure.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead. Let's get to the halftime break. And on the other side, we'll talk a little Big Ten women's basketball.
Yeah. You are listening to Big Ten Plus 4, hosted on Anchor and StreamYard.
Hey, this is Grab and Brisket Podcast. Join us every Monday where we talk about the latest trends in barbecue, interviews with world top pitmasters, celebrity cooks.
Ooh, like Wee Man from Jackass.
And musicians.
Like Rich O'Toole?
So check us out. We do beer reviews, barbecue fails.
So many fires.
Dude, a lot of people just burn their houses down for no reason.
We also talk about cocaine hippos versus Meth Gators.
Learn how to make some tailgate gravy.
Altercations with Texas Rangers.
People throwing Reese's peanut butter cups.
Yeah. So check out grabthebrisket.com for podcast info, viral social media posts, and so much more.
Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith. Everybody knows at the root of any good relationship, any relationship worth anything, is the only thing that matters between two people. And I'm talking about television. That's right. That's why you should listen to Married with Television, man, which is a podcast by my friends Shannon and Jamie, I call her cat ears, about movies and TV that they have loved for decades, man. You listen at marriedwithtv.com or anywhere you get your podcasts. They are proud members of the Odd Pods Media Network, man. Married with Television.
So, Tony, I just bought some flyers to do, like a grassroots type of advertising for Big Ten Plus 4. And
you can't go wrong with that type of promotion either.
Yeah, correct. And I got a great deal on flyers at Sticker Mule.
Yeah, I remember you saying that all of our
Sam.
stickers, all of our Klingons, everything like that comes from Sticker Mule.
Yeah, now our flyers too.
I guess so. So Sticker Mule is supposed to be the easiest way you can buy custom stickers, decals, labels, and other printing items all online, right?
Yeah, order in 60 seconds and they'll turn your designs and illustrations into custom stickers, magnets, buttons, labels, and packaging in just days. They offer free online proofs, free worldwide shipping, and super fast turnaround. If you click on the link in the show notes, Herman is going to give you $10 off any purchase of at least $10.
And you can start designing and order in minutes with Sticker Mule.
Yeah, and thank you, Sticker Mule. We're back. I can't hear you. Oh, I muted you.
There, we are back. Yeah, sorry about that. We had some behind the scenes, I suppose, difficulties more than normal.
I was hearing and seeing the Sticker Mule ad, but Dalton was not. So now you've got me wondering in the actual recording if there is the Sticker Mule ad.
Well, that's why I sat here like just staring at my computer for a good 15 seconds, and I'm like,
hence the reason why I asked if you were frozen, because you were just kind of staring blankly, and I'm like, did he freeze? And then I saw him move. I'm like, no, okay, great.
So there's our behind the scenes look at us trying to figure out just in case. So hopefully the audience got the sticker mule ad there.
Correct. If not, then I guess I've got some editing to do to take out the dead space. But...
Or just leave it and people will see exactly what you're talking about. Me being frozen staring at you blankly behind the curtain.
It was planned for me. It was planned for me.
Good. Hopefully the audience got that too. Okay, let's move now to the third quarter, second half. Big Ten women's basketball. We wanted to hit on here. Couple of games last night. Ohio State kind of gets back to its winning ways with the trip to Happy Valley, gets a win. Indiana just keeps rolling, man. Indiana is unbelievable right now. Only one loss on the year. That one loss was to Michigan State.
You're going to say that every single time we talk about IU, aren't you?
Yeah. It's kind of our calling card right now.
It's what I did for 2 straight regular seasons to my Ohio State friends. They'd be talking about how great Ohio State was, and I'd be like, yeah, but the last team to beat them in the regular season is Purdue, and just walk away.
It's nice just to have something to toss in there.
That's right.
But Big Ten women's basketball has a couple of games this weekend. Iowa, 7th-ranked Iowa, will be traveling to Nebraska. That one is Saturday. Number 8 Maryland heads to East Lansing to take on Michigan State as Michigan State gets back to it after having the game against Purdue postponed due to the tragedy that we'll talk a little bit about later on.
Or
we'll see.
Are they just kind of waiting to determine whether it's going to matter?
Well, I think a lot of it is like the women's schedule has less time than the men's schedule.
Yeah.
The women's schedule has one more week.
Yeah.
Like the window is closing quickly. So trying to find scheduling opportunities is rather difficult.
Now, is it possible, and I don't know how possible it is, to where if that missing game is not going to affect any seeding in the Big Ten tournament, and let's say they both get eliminated before the end of the tournament, but Purdue's on the bubble and they need that game played, would they play it during the Big Ten tournament to be able to get them that amount of games? Or is it one of those that once the regular season's done, we're done with it?
That would be my assumption.
Okay. And I'm not doubting that. I'm just, I didn't know.
No, I think if something happened like you're proposing, it would certainly be the first of its kind. Like status quo is like, once
the regular season's done, it's done.
Yeah. So I'm kind of interested to see how it plays out. But like I said, there's only a week left.
Yeah.
In the women's schedule, where the men still have another couple of weeks. But the women start their Big Ten tournament March 1st. Like, that's how close we are.
Well, the men start theirs, the 4th? So, like, it's not much after the women start. Isn't it the 4th that they start?
I would imagine it's a week later than that. But let me look real quick.
Because they're playing in 2 different sites, correct? They're not in the same city. So,
but usually
the venue run in.
But usually they both start on a Wednesday and end on a Sunday. So
I don't doubt that. I'm just
the men start March 8th.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Later.
Okay. So it's the next week.
Gotcha. Well, so March 12th, that means will be Selection Sunday. So that's always nice to have for the calendar.
T-minus less than 3 weeks.
It's wild. This season went fast, but anywho, Big Ten women's basketball. So we're getting down the home stretch. The big one to look at, the final game for Indiana and the final game for Iowa will be against each other. And that will come at the end of the year. That one will be happening in Iowa City, and that's going to be the big one. Indiana right now at 15-1, Iowa at 13-2. Iowa needs to try and win 2 more games before that one to put themselves in kind of a winner take all, or winner gets to maybe share. If Iowa could beat Indiana there, because to be honest, Indiana just has 1 more game, and I wouldn't bank on a loss from what we're seeing from Indiana at this point.
Well, and the only thing I would say is maybe, and I don't anticipate it, maybe the rivalry, the fact that it's Purdue, maybe. But that's such a small maybe that I would say that it's not even an option. Like that's my personal feeling on that one. But I was playing for hopes of a share in my thought. Mm-hmm. The Indiana, yes, I called them Indiana, is not going to lose 2 games, more.
Yep.
The Iowa's best hope is for IU to lose against them, and that's it. I just cannot see it happening.
So Indiana plays Purdue on Sunday. That's a noon tip. Now, remember, Indiana defeated Purdue pretty handedly at Mackey Arena earlier on. This time they're going to Assembly Hall. Yes. And to be fair, by the way, I don't know if we have given enough credit over time to Katie Gerald's, but what she's starting there at Purdue, I love. I think Katie Gerald's is a home run there at Purdue.
She was a fantastic player. I'm sure you're too young to remember her, but she was a fantastic player at Purdue.
Well, she tweeted out a photo the other night. Gosh, it was a week or so ago. Of her as a McDonald's All-American because she won the game's MVP or the 3-point shoot. I can't remember exactly what it was, but she won something at the McDonald's All-American contest. But I think it was the 3-point shooting. I think
it was. I think it was. I'm not 100% positive, but.
And do you know who was on the men's side that won the contest as well?
I don't.
LeBron James. So she tweeted out a selfie of her and LeBron from that McDonald's All-American game when LeBron passed Kareem for most NBA points. So
wow.
Yeah, Katie Gerald's was that player. Like, I am fully aware that Katie Gerald's was that.
But you don't remember seeing her play at Purdue though either.
Correct. But
no, I didn't. I guess I didn't put together that she was at the same time as LeBron. So well.
Now you're going to scurry on Twitter and try and find that photo at some point of Katie and LeBron.
Look, never mind. I'll keep it to myself.
But regardless, I think Katie's doing a phenomenal job. It's still just getting some of the stuff going for her, where Terry Morin is the all-time winningest coach, well into her tenure. She's got it rolling right now in Bloomington.
What year is this for Gerald's at Purdue? Is this her third?
I think second.
Second. Okay. So she's still trying to get the cupboard to be her own.
Yes. And by the way, when she was getting ready to start, it was still supposed to be Sharon Versup's year last year. And in 40 and they were going to do kind of what Matt Painter and Gene Katie did of the, like, here, let's get you a year with a little bit of supervision with me kind of behind you or whatever, kind of both working it together. It was supposed to be that deal, but Purdue and Versup ended up splitting ways about 40 days before the year last year. So then Gerald's with like 40 days was like, okay, now I'm just the head coach, and kind of got thrown into it. Yeah, no kidding.
Didn't Sharon Versup coach at IU at one point? I believe she was the coach at IU and left to go to Purdue. If I remember correctly, I believe she was at IU for maybe 1 or 2 years prior to going to Purdue.
I want to say that sounds familiar. Yes, she was at Indiana from 05 to 06 and then took over Purdue 06 to 21.
Yeah.
So
because I always kind of giggled because we stole their head coach. You know, that was kind of my thing, was like, yay, we stole your coach. But that's just me being a child.
And now they have Terry Morin, who of course also was a Purdue player and now leads Indiana.
Right.
But so for Indiana, that's their last game before the matchup in Iowa City. They play a Sunday against Purdue at noon. Meanwhile, for Iowa, we mentioned they're at Nebraska on Saturday. And then next week, it's Iowa at Maryland for what is currently a top 8 meeting. That's next Tuesday at 8:00. But that's a big one where potentially Iowa could trip up and the Iowa-Indiana game wouldn't mean as much at the end of the year.
Don't anticipate it to happen. I honestly just don't. We've talked about that. I think Iowa's got the best athletes in the conference. They just don't have the best team because I think that's IU. So I think eventually it's going to play out, but Maryland could, I guess. They're still mathematically in the race.
Maryland is, yes.
Maryland is.
Yes.
So that is a big thing because you're sitting at, everybody has 2 games left and 3 teams can win this regular season.
Well, and I want to kind of hone in and crack on one of the words you used there when talking about Iowa and Maryland, because I mean, you say that Iowa has the best athletes. I'd say they're the most talented, but in terms of that matchup, Maryland's got the athleticism.
I guess I misworded it.
I just wanted to circle back and
I'm glad you did.
Yeah. But Maryland is a long athletic team led by Diamond Miller, and I'll be kind of interested to see if they can't
co-player of the week this week. I think
that's possible. I mean, Diamond Miller has been unbelievable all year, so that
she's been playing to her name is what you're saying.
I saw somebody tweet out the other day, shine bright like a diamond. I'm like, okay, yeah, here we go. But no, so
joke headlines.
so they're so long, so athletic. I'm kind of interested, much like we talked about on the men's side, how teams are trying to pressure and frustrate Purdue a little bit. If Maryland tries to do a little bit of just the getting in passing lanes and just being long, athletic, and disrupting maybe some of Iowa's other guards, because you might get Caitlin Clark a couple times, but you can't bank on that for a whole game. But you can try and go around the rest of the team and force some turnovers. So I'm kind of interested
It's obvious that it's not how Caitlin Clark goes. That's how Iowa goes, because she went off against IU and IU won by 9. Like they shut down everybody else. They kind of went with we're going to let her get hers and we're going to shut down everybody else and we're going to win this game going away. Like there was no doubt.
In that battle between Monica Sinano of Iowa and Mackenzie Holmes in the post, like that's some good stuff. I'm excited for that again to end the regular season. Very excited. But so, as we look at it, Indiana in the driver's seat. Iowa has a chance. Maryland still has an outside chance. Michigan starting to I wouldn't really even say fall. They're losing to teams that they should lose to, air quotes, meaning just by the rankings. Like they're better teams. Like last night, they lost to Indiana. Michigan is solid. I just don't know that they're on the same playing field as those teams. But we're also talking about in Indiana and Iowa as potential Final Four squads. So like that, there's no shame there. It's just they're that good.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all.
We got 1 week left to kind of find a winner. We'll be talking about some of this next week as well, which should be a lot of fun. But also next week, make sure you join us Wednesday. Mike DeCourcy of Fox Sports, Sporting News, Big Ten Network. I mean, the guy is everywhere.
And he's really, really good at bracketology.
He does bracketology. He's also an expert writer. I mean, this guy he's your utility guy. He's the 5-tool player. He's going to join us next week, and we're going to go through some of the Big Ten stuff with him. That should be a treat next week.
I'm pretty excited. If any time during the weekend you throw on the Big Ten Network, Mike DeCourcy's in the studio analyzing games. So like he knows his stuff, and I think it's going to be a good talk about where the Big Ten stands when it comes to his projections.
Yeah, so that should be a lot of fun. We'll be doing that next week. But for now, let's get to the fourth quarter and the headlines. All right, and we're going to do something a little bit different here with the headline section. Normally, we kind of go back and forth and take a look at some different things. But and I understand that Sam earlier this week had kind of given his 2 cents on what had taken place at Michigan State. But of course, Michigan State, I mean, as you can see behind me, if you're on the visual medium, it's home. It's where we are. And tragedy struck earlier this week. On Monday, there was a mass shooting that hit at Michigan State, killing 3, sending 5 more to the hospital. It was just a senseless tragedy that took the lives. And at this time, I mean, it's still really just about sympathizing and trying to plead out to the families of the victims that lost their lives. And you just feel horrible, and there's no real way around it, especially to lose somebody so senselessly. It angers you. It makes you saddened. It's really, really difficult. But part of it, too, besides just sympathizing with the victims' families, way too often we only chalk up the victims as the ones that end up dying in these mass shootings. We don't necessarily spend enough time talking about the survivors of these shootings and the trauma they now spend the rest of their lives with. And I want to get the name right of the person who was speaking earlier this week. It was on the Dan Levitard show. They had somebody from the Washington Post. And again, I want to get his name correct, so I'm pulling it up for just a moment. John Woodrow Cox of the Washington Post. And he's been studying the mass shootings and specifically school shootings in America, and had pointed out that, we look at everything so binary when it comes to shootings. Like Michigan State, we'll remember the number 3. When it comes to Sandy Hook, we think often of 26, if I remember that number right, and Uvalde 21, so on and so forth. And he goes, but if you look and add up all the different numbers of survivors that have been at those school shootings, it's around 400,000. We've had 400,000 students that have been at a school shooting and survived. It's so hard to process a number that large, and the tragedy, the grief, the trauma that will follow these people and follow this generation as we continue just to have a very large problem in our country. But again, it hit home at Michigan State here, and certainly has shaken the walls at MSU. And now the Spartans are trying to bounce back because, again, athletics, not necessarily the most important thing at this time. They're going to resume games this weekend. That means the men's team will be at Michigan. The women's team will be hosting Maryland, and all the other sports. Hockey's at Wisconsin. They'll play tonight and tomorrow, and some of the others. But I do want to let everybody know, besides just sympathizing with the victims' families, thinking of all the students that now have this trauma that they will burden for the rest of their lives, Michigan State has felt the support from everybody around the Big Ten, around the country. The thoughts and prayers and all the different tributes and acts. You look last night, Michigan's wearing Spartan T-shirts, has Spartan stickers on the helmets of softball, baseball uniforms. I mean, it's really been felt, just the support that everybody has. So again, we want to wish our thoughts and prayers with the victims, with everybody who's going through it. It's always kind of awkward talking about the tragedy, but the emotion is real, and it's terribly sad. But it's something that maybe can inspire you is you're going to see Michigan State in hockey tonight. You're going to see them in basketball tomorrow, and they're going to try and push on. I mean, those student athletes have been asking many questions. They've been lost. They've been hurt. And they're going to try and stare adversity in the face and play a game and see if they can't win as we try and get back to normal. And I think that if you're looking for silver linings or something to inspire, that could be it.
Well, and I'm not at all comparing the passing of my father to this, but in the aspect of getting back into the groove of things, the grieving process is very long and arduous and probably never ending. I'm still not over my dad, and I don't imagine I ever will be, but being able to put 2-4 hours into doing what you've put a lot of work into to take your mind off of things, that's helpful. So in the grieving process and the healing process, getting back to normal is part of it, because that allows you to take your mind off of all of that has just happened. And we're a Big Ten community, Dalton. So like you and I may argue about Purdue and Michigan State, but we all love one another. I will never say I hate somebody from IU. I love them as people. They just wear the wrong laundry, but we're all Big Ten, and we're all part of, mankind. And that's the thing is understanding all the people that are surviving. And I mentioned that too, is, it's not just those who passed. That's tragic. But the people that have to go on having lost that is even more tragic on top of it.
And I'm sure that was a long-winded Dalton Daily headline.
It was perfect. It was great.
But just know, like, our hearts are obviously broken, and we think about the families all the time. There's so many photos and videos of those students that still get out there and kind of humanize it and put it in another spotlight. But our hearts are broken, but the Big Ten community has done a nice job in trying to help us
for sure
kind of move forward. Okay, as awkward as a tradition as transitions, look, we can't even talk right at this point. Fighting all the emotions. As clunky as we can make this, let's go ahead and now let everybody know where they can find us, wherever they get their podcasts.
Yeah, if you want to interact with us socially, go to Twitter, TikTok, or Instagram at Big 10 plus 4. You got to spell out the plus. Go to Facebook, find us at Big 10 plus 4, type out the plus, put the plus in. It doesn't matter. Oddpodsmedia.com. You'll find our audio version there every week, both episodes. ASAP Network allows us to stream twice a week, so we really appreciate that. And if you miss the stream and you still want to see us, I don't know what's wrong with you, but you can go to Spotify and check out the video cast of that show as well. So Yeah, this is a very tough way to end a show, but it's part of the healing process as well, Dalton. So just know that all of us at Big 10+4 are there with you there in East Lansing as well. So if there's ever anything, feel free to reach out to us.
And by the way, and I know we need to get out, Michigan State has done a tremendous job in its response and supplying infrastructure, resources for people, done a tremendous job, and that should be commended here as well on the way out. But okay, for Sam Sprunger, myself, Dalton Shetler, that's another episode of Big 10+4. Join us next week when Mike DeCourcy joins us as well. And for now, so long.